The following program contains mature content, including depictions of suicide and self-harm, which may be triggering. If you or someone you know is experiencing suicidal thoughts or a crisis, please reach out immediately to the Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255 or text HOME to the crisis text line at 741-741. In Canada, call or text 988, the Suicide Crisis Helpline. Support is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Hey, welcome to a new episode of Skin in the Game. I'm John Cimperman with my co-host.
I am Tim O'Shea.
Hey, Tim. Hey, we want to thank again Holiday Valley for being a presenting partner of Skin in the Game. With all the snow we've been getting up here in Western New York, you have now run out of excuses to get on the hill.
I know I've been waiting for them to fire up the snow machines, John, but Mother Nature has provided. So, no, we'll be out there soon. And John, I hope everybody out there listening and watching joins us down at Holiday Valley. Come on down to Ellicottville. It's a great town. Great resort year round, but no time better than winter to check out Holiday Valley.
Well, hey, yeah, welcome to Skin in the Game, and Tim, we have an Olympian who is going to be on the show today as our guest, Steve Mesler, who is a three-time Olympian and a gold medal bobsledder, is going to be joining us here on the program in just a few minutes.
Yeah, so excited to talk to Steve. And John, I want to thank you for bringing him on. Steve Mesler is a name I've known for a long time. I'm a Winter Olympics guy, and I got to tell you, part of being a Winter Olympics fan has always made me curious about a very basic question, which I'm going to ask him. How do you get into something like bobsledding? Most people don't grow up as bobsledders or doing skeleton or doing luge, the different sliding sports. So we're going to get into how one finds their way into that sport, but we're going to go a whole lot beyond that.
Yeah, it's a very, very powerful conversation. Yes, we will. I mean, Steve was a Buffalo, New York native, went to college down in Florida, and now he'll be joining us from Calgary, where he calls home. But the conversation, as everyone's going to find out too, it really, Steve went to the top of the mountain. He went to the top of the mountain, stood on the podium for his country, lifelong dream. And then, the question is, what's next, right? Because there is a letdown. So, Steve is going to walk us through, the trials, the tribulations, and now, which are great, great outcomes. But it's a very important and powerful conversation.
Yeah, it's a conversation that I so appreciate Steve having with us, John. And he took us deep into the highs and deep into the lows, the dark side of his journey too. And then takes us back out of it, shows how he hit rock bottom long after winning a gold medal and how he climbed back out. So, like I said, we go far beyond how one gets into bobsledding.
Yeah.
So if you're curious about that, you're going to find out.
Yeah.
But really, John, I mean, you've worked in pro sports your entire adult life. It is difficult, to put it lightly, for athletes once they're done with the game or the sport that they play.
Right.
And that's not just for people playing the major team sports. That's for individual athletes and Olympians. Right. And everybody has their own story. Steve's is particularly strong and stark at times, and I give him all the credit in the world for taking us into it.
Yeah. So do stay tuned for Steve Mesler, U.S. Olympian bobsledder, joining us here. But Tim, there is some news, and I just want to touch on a couple news items that I think will be of great interest to our listeners. First of all, we do talk a lot about the growth of women's sports. And there's news in both hockey as well as basketball. And I'm not sure if you caught it, but the Women's Professional Hockey League had the largest crowd in their history for a quote unquote takeover tour game in Washington, D.C. Over 17,000 fans packed the arena to, in many cases, experience women's professional hockey for the first time.
That's great. And John, I saw my first couple of PWHL games last year. One in Buffalo, one in Toronto. And it's interesting. The Toronto game was a home game for Toronto.
Right.
They were playing the Minnesota Frost, where actually one of our former skin in the game, one of our past skin in the game guests, Katie Knoll, plays for the now defending champions Minnesota
And by the way,
Frost.
listeners, go back and listen to that
Oh,
interview.
please do, and then check out how she's doing this season.
Yeah, yeah.
Katie's off to an incredible start in Minnesota. But yeah, when I was in Toronto and you see 8 or 10,000 people in that arena there, and the way they embrace their home team, that's powerful. But then when you go to a takeover tour, when the PWHL hits the road, and in this case it was Buffalo. They had the arena, we'd have to look back, probably about half full, which is fine, which is great. But just seeing so many young hockey players, girls and boys, both, in there to see these women who are the best in the world at the sport they play.
Yeah.
There's a ton of energy there, too. So it's great to
Yeah.
see in DC that they packed the place.
Yeah, it's great. And something, this is kind of an Olympic, kind of a preview episode in some ways. And it is going to absolutely be must-see TV, that women's Olympic tournament. And yes, US is strong. Yes, Canada is very strong, but so are the Swedes, so are the Finns. I mean, it will be a phenomenal tournament in Italy coming up soon.
No, I'm so excited to watch that. So excited. What's going on in the WNBA, John?
So, a WNBA is they're having unfortunately labor strife. And right now they're negotiating a new collective bargaining agreement. The players are looking for more of the piece of the pie. The owners are saying, hey, wait a minute, the pie is just finally getting bigger. I do see both sides of it, and I do hope, this season starts up in May. So, there's Toronto, for example. There's a new team coming up in Toronto. They need to draft players soon. So, the timing of any, negotiations, CBA isn't good, but right now, I mean, they need to be side by side and across the table and knocking this deal out so it's equitable for everyone.
And it's so tricky, too, because like you, I see both sides. The women who are playing in the WNBA absolutely deserve every dollar and more that they're seeking. And at the same time, I think and you can tell me if I've got this right. Ownership's argument essentially, right, is yeah, we realize we see what you're generating, we know how big this sport is getting, but if you start comparing it to the NBA, the pie is not as big as the NBA
Yeah.
pie, right?
Yeah.
Though it probably should be, and we want it to be. So, where do you go with that? What is that equitable solution? And how do you take care of the women playing it now, not just the women in the future? You got to build it for the future, right?
Yeah.
But these athletes' careers are so short, right? And we have to remember
Yeah.
that too.
Well,
So,
right.
how do you take care of the people on the court now?
Yeah. I think it's going to come down to negotiating the revenue share. So right now, the players receive approximately 10% of the revenue, which is shared for salaries. Compare that to the NBA, where 51% of the revenue is shared with the players. So I've got a hunch somewhere between those two numbers is hopefully where the sides can come together. I know the owners have already offered up a pretty nice raise on the minimum salary side. But I just think that, the partnership, and you see this with the NHL and you see this with the NBA, is the players need to have a vested interest in marketing and growing the game. And if they have a piece of that revenue pie that's, 30, 40%, whatever that number is, I think the game will grow. Here's what my concern is. There was so much momentum in the last year for the game, right? TV ratings up, merchandise up, more people in the buildings. The last thing the WNBA now needs is a work stoppage. The last thing.
And on the point about growing the game too, John, I'm thinking conversations I've had and we've had in the last couple of years with women who play, the major team sports. So I'm thinking here basketball, of course, hockey, including Katie Knoll, thinking also about soccer. They, to a person, without exception, they very much appreciate how important it is to market themselves and market the game and market their teams and get more people watching and playing. You talk about people who are ready and willing partners. The WNBA has already got that. So yeah, hopefully between that, 10 and 51%, they can find the number where they both, where both sides feel good or good enough to get back out on the court.
Yeah, exactly. And again, the season's tips off in May. So, that's just around the corner. So there's players to draft and, and there's expansion teams to get off the ground. So, hopefully they'll find a really good middle ground and let the games begin, right?
Yeah, we'll keep watching that. And in the meantime, we'll be watching the Olympics.
Yeah, so good segue, Tim. Thank you. We have an Olympian, Steve Mesler, three-time Olympian gold medal bobsledder from 2010, is joining us here on Skin in the Game. So please stick around.
Authenticity isn't something you manufacture. It's something you experience. At Holiday Valley, winter unfolds across fun slopes and the true ski town of Ellicottville, ranked number 4 in the East by Ski Magazine. Winter is better here.
The following program contains mature content, including depictions of suicide and self-harm, which may be triggering. If you or someone you know is experiencing suicidal thoughts or a crisis, please reach out immediately to the Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255 or text HOME to the crisis text line at 741-741. In Canada, call or text 988, the Suicide Crisis Helpline. Support is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Hey, welcome back to Skin in the Game, and I am thrilled to introduce our guest, Steve Mesler, Olympian, board member of the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committees, as well as currently the founder of Mesler Performance Group. Hey, Steve, welcome to Skin in the Game.
Hey, John. Hey, Tim. Thanks for having me. And hey, Buffalo.
Yeah, well, you say hey, Buffalo, and I think I just want to make sure that I get that out of the way first. A Buffalo, New York native who, I think there's also, and I do want to, in all seriousness, Steve, a member of not only the National Jewish Sports Hall of Fame, but the Buffalo Hall of Fame. So we're thrilled to have you on board here today.
Very few people out there who aren't, in a sliding sport know how somebody gets into, luge or skeleton, or in your case, bobsled. So let's get into it. Let's start right there.
Yeah. Let's get the elephant in the room out of the way.
Yeah. How the heck does one become a bobsledder, much less an Olympic medalist bobsled?
Well, when I tell people I'm from Buffalo, they go, "Oh, that makes sense." And I said, "No,
they
it
think it ends
no.
there. What
Really?
else is there to do?
Oh, you're from cold and snow. Oh, okay, it doesn't make sense at all. I was even lesser. I went to the University of Florida on a track scholarship. After I left, I was national champion as a high school athlete, and then got a scholarship down to Florida. I was like, I'm going to the warmth. I'm never going to live in the cold again. When when I'm getting on the plane in December to come home for Christmas and it's 70 degrees out, why would you live another way? And my track career was an absolute failure at University of Florida. And we basically, long story short, is that I got recruited by USA Bobsled to become a bobsledder. The longer story is I was hurt my entire college career. About 2 days out of Tommy John surgery, elbow surgery, I wrote an email to the Olympic Committee and I said, I'm this big, this strong, this fast. One of my old coaches once told me I might be a good bobsledder. What do you think? And I got an email back the next day and I started training, and my good Jewish mom, as you mentioned, the Jewish Sports Hall of Fame, my good Jewish mom had said, why don't you just get a job? And I said, well, give me 1 year. 1 year to try this. And, I look back at that really scared 22-year-old kid on the couch in Gainesville, Florida, who saw his sports career falling away, slipping between his fingertips, where I had all these aspirations to go to the Olympics and all this hope, and all this potential. I never fulfilled it in college. And if you don't fulfill it in Division I, where else are you going to fulfill it? And I'm so proud of that version of me who gave me the life that I have. Everything I have today is because I made that decision on that couch that one day. So, but apart from people who send emails like me, we recruit big fast football players. We recruit big track athletes. So there's a lot of folks who have come and followed in my footsteps from the Western New York area, actually, who have, from Ethan Albert Carey to others who, saw me do it. And, they were big. Maybe they couldn't catch a ball. Maybe they couldn't, run a route. Or maybe their track career just, beat them up in a different way.
Right. Well, that's, Steve, you mentioned, because I remember it was that early 2000s. There seemed to be there was a little bit of resurgence in bobsledding in the States, and it just seemed like they began to really look at, okay, what are the athletes out there, be it track and field or football, that these skill sets, and you said the size also translates well to the bobsled. Am I correct in the kind of the timing?
No, it was, a lot of it was probably off like the back of Cool Runnings in the 90s.
Right.
That everybody remember, everybody knew what it was. You had Herschel Walker came out in the 90s and made the 94 Olympic team, and Willie Gault.
Yeah.
So, some big time as we're, in the heart of the best time of football season right now. You had those guys, and it really elevated the profile a bit in the 90s, which meant then kind of the lagging indicator was people like me. It was on my mind, and we were able to build a real big legacy through that decade.
Right. And that decade, and your legacy includes 3 Olympic Games, the gold medal in 2010, which that was the first gold medal for a U.S. bobsled team for how long? 40, 50 years?
62 years.
Wow. And
it was 1948.
Wow. And it seems like the U.S. team, as far as international competitions, has in many ways kind of kept that level. It seems like we're always now, that was a big turning point for the program.
Absolutely. Yeah. We had won a silver and bronze medal in 2002 at the home Olympics. And then we got skunked in 2006 on the men's side. And then in 2010, we did the unthinkable and won, which, our team this past summer, Justin Olson, Kurt Tomasevich, and the late Steve Holcomb were inducted in the U.S. Olympic Hall of Fame, which is the first bobsledders to ever be in the Olympic Hall of Fame in our country. And then they won silver medals in 2014. And we haven't been on the podium since, but the expectation now is if you're not on the podium, you are not performing. And that's really, I'm proud that we set a new standard, and that is the way that we're looking at the team, that people expect it, and people do remember the success that we had back then. Yeah.
And was a lot of and I've been out to the training facility there in Lake Placid, were you based there? Was there a lot of time there in Lake Placid, the training facility?
I was based up in Calgary. I moved up here. Our national team coach, a guy named Stu McMillan, was up here in Calgary, who Stu went on to train like Andre DeGrasse, the Olympic medalist in track and field, and some others. But the team was based in Lake Placid. We'd report back there for training all the time. And for me, it was just a better training environment up here in Calgary, which is where I make home today. But Lake Placid was the training center that we'd use the most. Some of the guys trained out of Colorado Springs. We have a training center out in Chula Vista, California, outside of San Diego as well, that the USOPC, Team USA helps maintain as well.
Right.
Steve, what is it like? Another elephant in the room question here.
Yeah.
Steve, what is it like to ride in is ride the word to ride steer, jump into a bobsled? I mean, I watch you guys, and I say you guys, the men and women who do this sport, the speed, the coordination. Frankly, it looks like on TV, and I've been to the track too, John. The danger, it's got to be a rush, but take us inside that experience.
It is unlike anything else. I've gotten to ride in an F-16. I've gotten to do a lot of other fast. I've gotten to ride in, do hot laps in multiple NASCAR tracks from Daytona to Atlanta to others. And I've gotten to stand on the line of NHRA, the big funny cars, those kinds of the sprint racing. And getting in the back of a bobsled, man, it's a bit insane. It is a wooden roller coaster that is just shaking and vibrating the entire time while you're bent over with 5Gs, going through turns upwards of 90, 95 miles an hour. And at any point, something bad can happen and you can crash. And when you crash, again, bad things happen. There's been multiple deaths over the last couple decades in the sport. So you always had that edge. You always knew that you had to be focused. Like you had to show up no matter, there was no walk around, there was no walk through drills. There was no just like, trot it off at the top and just relax. Like you had to be dialed in every single time you went there because at any point something bad could happen. But at the same time, look, I got to slide down mountains, wear tights, travel the world. And I was the best in the world at running for 5 seconds and sitting for a minute. So it was a hell of a way to spend your 20s. And, I'd encourage anybody who can go out to Lake Placid or go out to Park City to give it a try. Like, I don't know, maybe it's a couple $100. It's not an inexpensive experience, but it is for the bang for the buck for the story you will get, because you'll tell that story so many times that it winds up being pennies on the dollar for every time you tell the story of going down the bobsled track, because your nervous system will remember it because it is so unlike anything else that you experience in life.
I was doing a story for the New York Times a handful of years ago for a kids section, the New York Times for kids. And this is not going to be a bobsled example. It's actually a luge example, but I know you're probably familiar and you can relate.
Yeah.
USA Luge has a program that recruits in essentially adolescents. I mean, kids who are 10, 11, 12 years old, right? So by the time they're 15 or 16, they're starting to travel and compete at heading toward a world-class level. And just watching those kids and the excitement they got out of this. And it was cool, too, because I met a lot of kids who were finding themselves, like kids who didn't, and I'm generalizing a bit here, but kids who didn't necessarily fit in another sport in school or another activity in school or in their life. And luge became their thing. And I know bobsledders tend to start a little bit older, right? Mm-hmm. And I think in general, but do you find the same thing happens for people who were athletes in another sport like you were, and then, find bobsled and start finding that teamwork, that success?
Yeah, no, it's a great observation, Tim. You'll see the luge athletes that when the Olympics come on, you're bang on. You got to start young. If you start past 13, if you haven't gone down a sled, they're not even going to bother with you. In most cases at that point, it takes a good decade to get it. And they're going through vectors and physics classes and doing all these things because luge is the way that it works. If you look at luge, which is feet first for everybody back, listening, skeleton is the head first one, and then bobsled is in the big giant sleds. So luge is the most difficult. So it is the one that if anybody got on a luge sled and tried to go off the top, you'd crash in curve one. Like it's because it's so precise. The runners are really sharp. You have to because the runners are so sharp and because it's so precise, a tiny little nudge will cause the sled to go in the direction you nudge it, which means you got to really know which way you're nudging the sled and moving it. So you got to start really young to get that feel. Skeleton and bobsled tend to be older sports. Bobsled mainly because you have to push this giant thing that weighs 400 pounds. So you need the strength and you need the body maturity to be able to do that. Bobsled is the most dangerous. If luge is the most difficult, bobsled is the most dangerous because if you crash, you have 1,400 pounds of sled and other guys on top of you in a four-man sled. And that thing is going to the bottom because our good friend gravity will ensure that the sled and you go all the way to the bottom and you're stuck in there. Skeleton is actually counterintuitively the safest because if you crash, you can just let the sled go and off it goes. And both a bobsled runner, like the blades at the bottom of the sled, I mentioned luge is really sharp. Bobsled and skeleton, the runners are actually like if you hold your thumb up and you look at the radius of your thumb, the curve on your thumb, that's about what the shape of a skeleton or bobsled runner actually looks like, which means it's not as precise, right? Like you don't have as much control, which is why you see them skidding all over the place in the straightaways because they don't actually have control unless you're up in a corner. But the reason that it is that kind of round as your thumb rather than like a butter knife, like luge as well, you got 1,400 pounds. And to have those sleds go up on a curve like that and change direction going 90 miles an hour, you're pulling 5 or 6 Gs. So if you think about a 1,500 pound object under 5 Gs, all of a sudden it weighs 7,500 pounds. And if you had butter knives, it would just stick right into the sled, stick right into the ice, and you wouldn't go anywhere. So that's the physics of what everybody's going to be watching this coming month.
Well, and speaking of this coming month, and this is, a great kind of preview for the Olympics. The one before we talk post-Olympics and your post-Olympic career and your new career, this question came to mind, and the work you put into it and the dedication, what goes through your head? And specifically your head, what went through your head when you are receiving that gold medal on that podium in 2010? I mean, I can't imagine. That's why I'm asking you this question.
16 years later, it'll be 16 years this February, 16 years ago. You're not a very complex individual at that point. You've worked really hard on one thing for your entire adult life. And at that point, I think the things that I was capable of thinking and feeling were flashing back to how I got there, which was like failure in college, success in Buffalo, failure in college, success when I was younger, or failure when I was younger, like 11, 12, and then success in Buffalo, it's national champion, and then going to like all these milestones along the way. You kind of really quickly, you go down this really quick rabbit hole in your head as you step, and you actually hear your name be announced as an Olympic champion as the flag goes up, and your family's out in the crowd. And it is something that you always wanted, but you never really thought you'd be there. Even the morning before the race, you don't really quite understand that is possible and that's going to happen. And it's so overwhelming. It's like, you watch guys win the Super Bowl and they're speechless, right?
Right.
And you watch people win the Stanley Cup and they're speechless. And I always thought, how are you speechless right now? You've waited for this your whole life. How do you not have anything to say? And I'm a verbose person and I was quite speechless. And, as I look back now, I value it more and more the older I get. I value the experience that I got to have, that I was fortunate to have. When you are working your way through sport, and this goes the same for people who build business. You guys can probably, identify with this when you build businesses. And I spend my day-to-day now working with like high performing CEOs and others. And like, you kind of live in a world where everything isn't good enough. You kind of live in a world of not good enough. So I got this, the team's not good enough. My leadership's not good enough. I don't know enough about this. The product's not good enough. The processes aren't good enough. You're always trying to fix different fires. But all of a sudden, when you actually when you become the dog that caught the truck, either you can flip that and go, I was good enough. It was good enough, which is really hard to do when you've worked your whole life under a spell of not being good enough. And I think as I reflect back on that, I have more and more of an appreciation to say like, yeah, I did that. We did that and we worked for it and we earned it. And man, were we meticulous, because it's just part of your day to day. Just working that hard, just waking up every single day at the same time, having the exact same breakfast every day, going to training, working, being really precise in your warm up, because if you could be 3.5 years away from the Olympic Games, and if you get hurt today, that could affect 3.5 years from now. If you pull a hamstring today, that injury can compound over time. So every single day you go into training, you're looking for as close to perfection as possible, as often as you can. And that's just the way you live. And you take that for granted over a decade, 15 years of time. And again, I can look back at that, and I've kind of spent the last 5 or 6 years of my life. I went through a really, really bad depression about 7 years ago now. And I've also competed in the Olympic Games with 6 guys, and I've had to bury 2 of them from mental illness. And I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out how and why I was so content and successful, and also like really fulfilled back then as an athlete. And how do you move that forward as an adult? How do you move that forward as, I'm 47 now, I've got 2 kids and a family and a job and all these things. And I don't want to just say I only lived like that in my 20s.
Right.
Sure, I got to slide down mountains wearing tights, but boy, oh boy, I get to do all kinds of things today. And that's the kind of the rabbit hole and the mousetrap that gets open when you ask what it's like to stand on the podium, because all of these things kind of come one after another, and that's what happens on the podium as well.
Well, that's really a great kind of a great segue to where I was hoping, Tim, we could take
Oh,
this
you're
conversation.
welcome.
No,
Look at that.
yeah, no, we're
Glad I could help.
Yeah, we're here with Steve Mesler, the founder of Mesler Performance Group, and yeah, back in the day, bobsled and a gold medal. But you talk about now that transition, and I really wanted to talk a little bit about kind of, I think I'm using your words, coping after competition, and it just seems like there were some dark times, but you've taken that energy and that experience to now try to help others coping after competition. So just if you could give us and our listeners a little bit of kind of background on the evolution of I guess I would say that enlightenment for you.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And everybody goes through it a little bit differently, but I would say that when everybody's watching the Olympics coming up here, one thing you can see is that these folks they're living their dream. How many people get to actually live their dream? Very, very few. So you're getting to do that. And then you're realizing that you're living your dream, which means what happens tomorrow? Like, what is that? How could that possibly be as good? How can tomorrow be as good as today? And hope, I've had, again, like some really amazing experiences in the last 16 years. And one of those is through Classroom Champions, the nonprofit that my sister and I founded. We work with indigenous populations, mainly up here, largely up here in Canada, work with regular school districts across the US and Canada, but work with a mental health professional, woman named Dr. Quintana Adolfo. Dr. Q is her nickname. And we were having a discussion one day about different things. And I asked her, like, how can Classroom Champions help? Like, the First Nations, the Native Americans up here in Canada, they call them First Nations. They are the like Black and brown population, urban population. They are the white rural populations in the US where education and community are really struggling. And that is the First Nations population up here in Canada. And she had said she was looking for hope. And I hope is always a really squishy term for me. All right, I mean, okay, but I can't really sell hope. I don't really know how to quantify that until she gave me her definition. And now it is my working definition. And I realize it is the single most important thing to do as a leader and in a lot of ways as a human being, which is her definition of hope, which is now my definition of hope, which is my actions today will make my tomorrow better. And when you get to the end of your career, whether it's you sell in the company or whether you get the job that you always wanted or whether you win the Olympics, if you can't figure out how tomorrow can be better than today and you start to lose hope, it gets really hard. And that's what happens to many, many athletes, is that it's really hard to imagine that tomorrow can be better than today. Right. And if that makes sense, and then all of a sudden you start to not think the things you do matter. Because as an athlete, everything you do matters. If I eat that extra egg, man, that's 6 extra grams of protein. That is more recovery. That's more muscle. If I get that extra sleep, that's all of the good things that happen in sleep. That's if I do all these extra things, an input provides an output. And the challenge when you complete your sports career that these athletes go through, and I myself went through as well, is for some people it takes within a year. Jarrett Speedy Peterson, who was a U.S. freestyle aerialist, 3-time Olympian, won a silver medal the day before our races that we won our gold medal, and he was in all 3 Olympics with me. Finally won a silver medal, and a year and a half later, told the police where they could find his body. Mm-hmm. And when he went and took his own life between Salt Lake City and Park City, Utah. And or some people like me where it takes 9 years. And I was highly successful when I hit depression. I had, Classroom Champions was thriving. I was sitting on the board of directors of the U.S. Olympic Committee at the time, and all these other things. So some people it catches right away. Some people it takes a little while. But for me, it's all connected to that concept of like hope and your actions kind of making tomorrow better.
Steve, do you mind if we dig a little deeper into your journey on that?
Oh, yeah, happy to.
So as best you can and as much as you're willing, take us through that 9-year journey post medal. It sounds like from the outside, so much, maybe everything from the outside appeared to be going well, but certainly a lot of it was, including your post competition career, right? And so it would look like you have it all together, and no one ever does, and we know that. But what was going on? What was going on behind all of that that took you down that journey that you've now had to work to come back from?
Yeah, and look, I'll say when I say happy to, I don't like talking about this, but also I don't like running, and I do that most days too. So I recognize it's good for me and it's good for others. So I'll just say that for people that say I don't like to talk about these things. Well, me neither. But again, it's good for myself and good for others. So I do. So for me, I found myself. I was like 2018. The gymnastics, Larry Nasser. If you remember the Larry Nasser USA Gymnastics scandal? So I was a board rep on the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee. There's only 15 people on that board, and it is the board. You're up there with Fortune 100 CEOs. Congress was getting involved. I was, as an athlete rep, I was, both a target as well as, probably could have been doing a better job also. Simultaneously, Classroom Champions had been kind of flat for a few years. The organization, I was CEO at the time. We've got a great new CEO, Seth Rosenzweig, that runs the organization now. But we've been flat for a few years. Revenue wasn't going up, wasn't going down, but it was stressful. And I could always kind of see, like every entrepreneur's journey, like I could see the payroll. I could see horizon for payroll would come up, and our fiscal year was July 31. So every winter, you're kind of looking that 6 month, 1 year out, but you're looking 6 months out a little bit for some of the acute things. And you should be looking 2 or 3 years out. But at that time I was kind of looking down my nose, and that the stress of that was building in the winter of 2018, 2019. It would build every winter, but it was especially bad then. And then, we had a family at that point. So I was a new dad, 1.5 years old. So sleep probably hadn't been all that great. Hadn't been working out very much. Part of the Olympic Committee thing, I was losing connection with other people because I was part of this tribe that I was so proud to be a part of, right? I had worked my entire life to become an Olympian, and I was part of that group. And then all of a sudden on the board, I was getting run over publicly and through the mud by other athletes out there. I had stopped the organization was flat. I'd stopped trying to get better at things. So I stopped, trying to achieve things, and health wasn't all that great. Wasn't working out as much as I should have been. Wasn't learning new things. Wasn't curious about stuff, and again, didn't feel very secure in what I was doing. So all of a sudden, I found myself. I would usually wake up about 5 a.m. and find myself. I'd go down, and we had a gym in the basement, and I'd go and work out. And my wife, about an hour later, would quite often find me just as a puddle crying on the couch. I had never been through anything like this before. To your point, externally, everything was great. My personality, everything's fine, great. Olympic gold medalist, big organization, prestigious board seat, new family, all of those things, all the things that you're looking for. And it was a combination of too much, yet at the same time, I just didn't know how to process all of that. And I didn't know how to take care of myself properly in a way that I could keep it, together in a way. And all of a sudden I found myself in a deep depression, which is, I was able to equate it to a sports world where I realized that my brain was broken. I couldn't make decisions. You guys have run businesses before. You gotta, all you're doing is making decisions all day long. And if your brain is broken, you can't make decisions. Well, it gets really hard to do your job. And then if you're not doing your job, then you're not feeling good about yourself. And then it's a downward spiral from there. So, I'll pause there. But went into medicine, went into the doctor, got medication, and started to work my way out.
First, thank you for sharing. Thank you for taking us there. And speaking for myself and John, I'm sure you. Just you being open about that, and I think for all the people watching and listening, it means a lot. So thank you for that. When you hit that point through yourself, your family, your doctor, where you were able to pin down what was going on and I suppose maybe call it what it was, and appreciate the fact you're open about using the word depression, and being open about that. But when you grasp that, take us through the journey out and what, even just glimpses, like what did that look like? How did you find a way to emerge, and how are you doing now too?
Let's start with the end on that. I'm fantastic now. I am that was one of the best gifts I've ever been given, to go through that. Wouldn't roll the dice again. I don't suggest it for people. But for me, it gave me a lot of things, and I'll talk about those. But to your question of, what was it like at that point? It is a shame. I was ashamed. Absolutely. I felt that I shouldn't be complaining about these kinds of things. They can feel like first world problems in a lot of ways, because I was working with populations who had so much less than I have. They don't have a couch on their main floor that they can stop and cry on their way into their home gym in the basement.
Right.
And those are real things that go through your mind, which then increases the shame even as well. So starting to pull myself out of there was, recognizing what it was. I had a pivotal moment where I was walking downtown here in Calgary. There's a C train, which is the light rail system. And it was a cold Calgary day. We get these cold days where the snow is just kind of dustily blowing across the streets. And I remember walking down the street and seeing the C train there. And I was in between meetings and thinking I'm like 5 steps away from the tracks. Maybe everybody else would be better off if I took that route. And I have this conversation with a lot of people who reach out who are in bad places. And if you can get through those moments, like I had teammates who, like, when you ask yourself a serious question of, do I want to live today? And it's a real question, not today, not like now how, like, hopefully if, the three of us are doing okay. And that's not a real question to ask yourself, but when it's a real question and you actually have to think about it and you say, yes, I do. The next thought that goes through your mind is why. And if you cannot get to a why real fast, you go back to, do I want to live today? And, I had teammates who said no, and that was it. If you say no to that question, there's no more questions. It is the first and final question that you can ask yourself. And the gift of asking yourself that question is you get to rebuild from the bottom, and you get to rebuild back up with a why. And, my daughter was the why at the time. Though again, crossed my mind that insurance and all these things, she'd be better off otherwise, because you don't feel any value of yourself in those moments. So what I tell people who are going through these kinds of things right now, or close to these kinds of things, is, for me, that was my bottom, is that moment. And I found a why. And then I went to counseling. And then from that moment I said, okay, I got to go to the doctor. I got to go to counseling. I got to get a team around me. My brain is broken. What would I have done if my hamstring was torn? I would have gotten a team around me. I would have gotten therapists around me. I would have talked to my coaches. I would have talked to people about it. So I started talking to people more. I started reestablishing connection in my life, and talking to people about it. And a mentor of mine, a guy named John Berardi, who's also a very good friend, who was the former founder of a company called Precision Nutrition. He's just across the border there. So he'll be able to, he's close to you guys. And JB had, he and I met up at one point. I went to his house just to talk through some business things. And I didn't realize that he had gone through depression at one point. And when he talked to it about me, I started to be able to realize that I could talk about it if he could. So my goal in talking about it, even though I don't like it, is that it makes it better when you talk about it if you're in this place. And B, I got to experience life at the upper end of joy. When you win an Olympic gold medal, I mean, John asked the question about what it's like on the podium. When you win, when you do that thing that you dreamt about as a child, beyond your dreams as a child, that is the most recognizable achievement in humanity. You go to sub-Saharan Africa, they may not know what that Apple logo looks like or that Coca-Cola logo looks like, but boy, you put a piece of gold with 5 rings on it in front of them and they know they not only know what it is, they know what it means. And I got to have that experience. And then I got to have the privilege of being on the other end of it, where I was one question away. And as a guy who grew up, 47 years old right now, growing up in the 80s and 90s, the only dudes who talked about their emotions or talked about these things that were in TV shows or movies got their butts kicked. They were the guys who got their butts kicked. And that was that was how we got role model. That's why one of the many reasons why men are really bad at talking about these things is because we associate it with the guy at the movies, on the movie or the TV show that got their butts kicked. And, I'm kind of the point now where like I have no problem talking about it because I recognize how much better it made me access this entire tool set on the other side of the spectrum that is not talked about as much. But like, if you equate it to like in dude speak, like tools in the garage, like no dude walked into another dude's garage and said, "Oh, you have too many tools." I have this entire tool set that got open to me because of depression. So folks who are going through it right now, or at the, the bottom edges of anxiety as well, like if you make it a decision that it's going to get better, it will be one of the best things you've ever done because you've accessed this entire part of your brain and your nervous system and your life that you didn't really know was there before, especially on the guy's side.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and, I really hits a note for me, Steve, is that kind of finding your why and right. And and I'm looking here to Tim, Steve was, an Olympic athlete, a gold medalist. So every day for all those years, the why was, how do I get better to get on that podium, right? And this is very transferable to, life goals for a lot of athletes who, I want my name on the cup. I want to hold the Lombardi trophy. And what happens next? And I think finding that why, and especially for you, and obviously being a father is a great why. But now what I think is really important, Steve, is what you're doing with the Mesler Performance Group, and hopefully having the ability to communicate this, to others, both business as well as athletes, business people and athletes, and helping them find that kind of that post-career transition.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, John, like, yes, thank you. Like, that's really well and succinctly said. Succinctness is not one of my specialties. I'm working on it.
It's my way of judging. It's not mine either. So.
But and you guys told me it was a longer podcast. So, but I look at I find it really fascinating to help people in the middle of their career. Like that's actually, I think the finishing your career, and I help people, both athletes as well as like if people who sell their companies, a lot of people sell their company and they're miserable, and helping them set up for success, the years going into that as well as the transition of it as well as the years after is really interesting to me. But also help, I think about watching, bring it back to Buffalo, watching Josh Allen after the Chiefs game this year. Do you remember that interview at all? Did you watch that one at all?
I was at that one. Remind me what he said in the interview, though.
He was very dispassionate. Like he had been the last year or two, couple of years, which is like, we won.
Right.
Okay. And he did, he did that kind of thing, kind of like didn't want to make a big deal out of it. Right. And I know Deion Dawkins and Deion and Reed Ferguson had volunteered for Classroom Champions for a few years when we did stuff with the Buffalo Bills with Michelle Roberts and Gretchen over the Bills for years, and an amazing experience for kids in Buffalo. But watching Josh do that, simultaneously you can watch Josh after a loss, and boy does he beat himself up. Mm-hmm. He shoulders a lot of it. He beats himself up. And I almost texted Dee on this, but it was like, I'm not going to pile on, which is, Josh, like, if you don't think it matters when you beat the Chiefs, then it doesn't matter when you beat the Chiefs. Like, don't worry about giving them extra fuel. Enjoy it. Like, enjoy it. You did the thing. At the time, the Chiefs were, they were really hot at the time when we beat them in the middle of the season. And to just to me, that turned the opposite direction of what he was intending it to do, because he can't quite connect those dots yet, which is like, make it a big deal. Make it important. Be proud of it. You're not going to get those chances many times. And when you look back on it, you'd be like, man, it's really too bad I wasn't able to enjoy that and celebrate those wins. And, we look back and say, as a leader, you want to try to celebrate the small wins, right? But you have this overwhelming thing, which is, if I celebrate the small wins, I'm going to hurt motivation of my people, of my team. So that's what Josh was trying to do. But like, here's what, like the research would tell you that actually, if you just say, hey, like John, you did a good job, Josh, you did a good job, that's going to hurt motivation. But if you were really specific, Josh was able to say, hey, like if we just beat the Chiefs, I'm happy. Okay, that might hurt it. But when folks can learn, actually, I'm really happy that we stepped up here today and we did this, this, and this to beat the Chiefs, that specific kind of positive feedback is actually going to improve motivation. And I want for people to be able to connect those dots, because you're going to beat yourself up a lot. And you need to have a 5-to-1 positive or negative feedback loop, whether you're a leader to your people or whether you're an athlete to your own, inside your own internal dialogue. You got to be able to have a positive loop there. And things like beating the Chiefs is a big part of that. So I think helping people in the moments of their greatness keep going, because that gives you the fuel you need when you are going to be critical of yourself.
Well, it's interesting, Steve, too, to hear you talk about positive self-talk and using that 5-to-1 ratio for yourself, because you go to, like, teachers are taught 5-to-1 praise versus criticism of students, and of course coaches and leaders, everything you just laid out there. But you're saying do it for even if it's internal, just in your head, do it for yourself.
It's a relationship with when you think about the self, how critical we are of ourselves, we have a relationship with ourselves. And some days we're hard on ourselves and some days we're not. Well, then cushioning it and actually realizing that it is a relationship. It is not just like the way that you talk to yourself, you can actually choose. The way you talk to yourself doesn't just happen on its own. A lot of people just think it happens. This person pissed me off, and then I'm talking poorly about them in my head. I'm talking poorly about what I did in my head. Well, you don't actually have to do that. It's your thoughts. You actually get to do that. And we learned that the hard way in 2006. And I learned that going into the 2010 games. And again, I've had this really incredible experience between sport, as well as the coaches I've worked with and the people I've gotten to work with and the mentors I've had, as well as then building a curriculum for 15 years to help build tiny humans and help them get better. Being able to put all these things together now at this stage of my life it helps me personally. So I'm able to do that on a regular basis. And then it helps those that I work with.
Well, that's great. I wanted to just, for our listeners too, just if you could just give me or give us kind of that elevator speech on kind of the Mesler Performance Group, and kind of what the core mission is of the organization that you've built.
Yeah. So there's 2 orgs. So I've built Classroom Champions, which is focused on youth and schools, classroomchampions.org for those out there. And that organization's mission is to help schools and students, reach their goals and gain the life skills that you need to be successful in life. Mesler Performance Group is the professional side, is my professional side now. That was Classroom Champions, a nonprofit. My professional side, Mesler Performance Group, works with CEOs and founders, as well as athletes and musicians, and helps them find success with fulfillment over time, sustainably.
Those are, in addition to being a dad, which is the most important why, those are
Yes.
2 pretty great whys as well.
Yeah.
Hey, as we wrap up here, and this is an Olympic year, this is a Winter Olympic year.
Mm-hmm.
Are you excited? Are you looking forward to it? Where will you be watching bobsledding? give us a little preview of what an Olympic gold medalist does during the 2026 games.
Well, the kids are 8 and 4 during the Olympics. Our young Axel, our younger one, turns 4 in early February. I will be doing as much as I can to watch from home with the kids. They are, especially the 8-year-old, she gets it now. Mm-hmm. She gets it. She gets the gold medal. She gets what dad did. The Axel doesn't really, it doesn't really add up yet, but I'll be watching. We're contemplating going over to Italy. My wife will be over there already, going over to Italy to watch at least 4-man bobsled. So hoping to go there, but I'm so excited, like from both Team USA and now having lived in Canada for 20 plus years, Team Canada's athletes. Living in Calgary, we know a lot of athletes.
Yeah.
And our kids are around Olympians. Their standard is Olympians that they're around all the time in a way that we just don't have exposure to in Buffalo. And I'm excited to watch the folks that I know. I'm excited to watch. The thing that I love and I encourage people to do is watch and cheer for them and celebrate with them when they win and cry with them when they lose, because like you're getting to watch people live their dreams, and you just don't get that all that often. Even with, the Super Bowl coming up, they get a shot every year, and you get a long career in football, and you get a dozen shots at that every year. You get 1-2 shots at the Olympics. I was lucky to get a third kick at the can, but that's very rare. So just enjoy it and like watch what they say afterwards. Like watch how they handle themselves. It's okay to be pissed. I tell athletes all the time, I'm like, be pissed. It's okay. Like if you wanted it that bad and you worked for 15 years and you messed up or you just didn't get it done that day, be pissed.
Right. You may not have had your best day, right?
Yeah. Or you could have had your best day and you didn't do it. It's still okay to be pissed in the moment. Like if you're not a little bit pissed because you got 4th place or 5th place at the Olympic Games, then you didn't want it bad enough. Is the way that I look at it. And that's a really fun thing to get to watch every day for 16 days in a row.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. Steve Mesler, so happy you could join us from Calgary, and on your next trip into beautiful Western New York, we'd love to have you in studios, and maybe we'll do a little post-Olympic wrap conversation.
I'd love that.
That'd be great. Or if you ever want to meet in Lake Placid, I'll pay the couple $100 to ride the bobsled and get that experience.
Well, that's one of those. Wait. As there, we're a little off topic here, but are there? You have fantasy baseball camps. Is there a fantasy bobsled camp?
I believe there is. I believe they do have fantasy bobsled camp. You get to go and learn how to drive a sled. You get to do all kinds of things, and I think they even have one where you get to stay at the Olympic Training Center if you want to.
Yeah.
You know how I told you I would ski this winter, John? I think you know what I will, but I might be looking up that fantasy camp.
Right.
That'd be fun.
Hey, Steve, thanks again for joining us on Skin in the Game, and all the best to you, you and the family out there in Calgary.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, guys, and enjoy the Olympics, everybody back home in Western New York.
Authenticity isn't something you manufacture. It's something you experience. At Holiday Valley, winter unfolds across fun slopes and the true ski town of Ellicottville. Ranked number 4 in the East by Ski Magazine. Winter is better here.
The following program contains mature content, including depictions of suicide and self-harm, which may be triggering. If you or someone you know is experiencing suicidal thoughts or a crisis, please reach out immediately to the Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255 or text HOME to the crisis text line at 741-741. In Canada, call or text 988, the Suicide Crisis Helpline. Support is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Hey, welcome back to Skin in the Game. And again, I want to thank Olympic gold medalist and founder of the Mesler Performance Group, Steve Mesler, for joining us on Skin in the Game. What a great guy! What an inspirational story. Tim, it did go a little deeper than I think we originally intended, but I'm really so glad that we did.
Yeah, and Steve. First of all, I want to repeat something here, John, that I said to him during our conversation. I so appreciate and respect Steve being willing to
go through,
take us through his journey,
right? And
I hope, and I'll say, speaking as someone who's in his demographic, not his athletic demographic, but mid-40s guy, growing up, like you said, where a lot of guys did it. Most guys, I think it's fair to say, wouldn't talk about these things,
sure.
And it's fair to say still probably won't. Too many, maybe too many still probably won't.
Mm-hmm.
He is in a position to experience, as he said, he said it more eloquently than I'm going to now, but the highest highs and very low lows, and to the gratitude he has for having experienced both ends of that spectrum and building that toolbox, right, and being able to do something with it. Talking about it and sharing it is is a form of doing something with it. So I'm respect that he went there, and I'm happy. As he said, it's not a happy thing to talk about, but I'm happy we were able to talk about it, since that is what is real.
Yeah, and I'm hoping our listeners and our viewers got as much out of it as we did. I think it's also, though, and I think as Steve mentioned, it's not only what athletes, at the top of the peak feel? Because, you know, there is letdowns after you've worked so hard to reach your goals, and right, and what's next?
Yeah, like now what?
Now what? Now
Yeah.
what? But it's also, and Steve alluded to, and that's what he's doing now in his consulting firm, is this also happens with parents, right? When in a small way, when the kids go away to college, or
Just did that one.
just did that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But also, you know, when you get that promotion, or you sell that business, you know, or you're, whether you like to or not, when you go into retirement, right? What is next? What's that? And I love what Steve mentioned. What's that why? You know, and what's that challenge? And what are you doing? And by the way, it could be, as many people do, volunteer for a not-for-profit, or join a board of directors, or find ways to give back. And I think that's what Steve's doing now with his firm, is now he's giving back with those lessons that he's learned as an athlete, you know, as well now as a business professional.
And interesting too that he specializes or focuses on working with people who are mid-career, right? Because when you're in that mid-career, you've got a lot of wisdom coming in already,
right,
because you've done so much, but you have so much to go, and he's in this position to help people plan and be proactive, and,
right,
and it's really, 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 really powerful. I'm glad, John, that I asked him at the beginning what it's like to ride a bobsled, because
yeah,
I was curious, and man, did we get beyond that question. But that sport too. Think about the lessons you learn from any sport, but this is one that it's a team sport at high speed. It is a death-defying sport. It's one of the riskiest out there.
yeah.
Just on the surface, just what it takes to be great at that sport is fascinating. Go deeper, what it takes to motivate oneself to do that sport. I'm not sure we could possibly understand it even from a deep conversation, but
Right.
That's something that's playing out in my mind too.
Yeah, well, I, for one, as I watch the Olympic Games, will have a much greater appreciation, you know, not only for bobsledding, but I was blown away by the training and the complexity of the luge sport. That's one.
It is incredible. Yeah, that one I've experienced
Yeah.
as an observer. Yeah, that one's incredible. And
Yeah.
these kids who are starting luge, they do start it, like, we're talking middle schoolers, and they are dedicated to it. And yeah, he's right, but I'll reinforce his point, Steve's point. It takes a decade of hard training. You talk about 10,000 hours,
Right.
to get good, really good.
And you do,
at that
and
sport.
seriously, you don't think of that when you're watching it, because to the layperson, oh, look, that's like sled riding. Oh no, it's not.
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
I do want to say, for people out there, if you've got if you have someone in your life, a kid in your life who watches the Olympics and sees these sliding sports and says, "How do I do that?" If it's a kid and they're interested in luge, look up USA Luge and look at their sliding competitions or sliding camps that they do over the summer. They actually do it on dry ground with essentially skateboard wheels to find kids who are coachable and have great balance. That's what they look for, and there's an opportunity to get involved.
It may be wired a little bit different.
You gotta,
because that's
yeah.
your take. I don't want to. It is, that's super challenging, and mentally, just to put in the time, the training, and then the risk involved in the sport.
And
like
and it's parents too, John, who are not only wired differently to allow their kids to engage in the sport, and USA Luge can keep it pretty safe because they work up.
Sure.
They work up. So the kids aren't at great risk. They learn how to work to that point, but it's also a huge commitment of time, money, and travel on the parts of the families. And on the flip side, if you're a late teens, early 20s athlete, a big, strong athlete whose track career, other sports career,
right,
hockey career is ending,
right,
luge and skeleton and bobsled,
right,
might be looking for you.
Yeah.
Steve's sitting on a couch sending an
Yeah.
email to USA Bobsled
Yeah.
saying, "Hey, what about me?"
Well, I'm safe.
There you
It's
go.
pretty safe to say my bobsledding days are over.
Yeah, mine
Actually,
too.
they haven't started. But they're already over.
And our dreams.
But
Yeah.
it is fun, and Steve alluded to it as well, to head up to Lake Placid. The training facility is there.
Yeah.
You can get in a bobsled.
Oh, you sure can. They tried to get me to do it.
Yeah, no, and I've done it. I've done it.
Have you?
I've been in a bobsled. It was in the summer on wheels. It was probably going 50 miles an hour versus the 90 plus miles per hour.
50 is respectable.
But it's a great thrill, and I'd encourage any of our listeners who are up in the Lake Placid area to take an afternoon and check out the Olympic training facilities.
Oh, for sure. And there are not many places in the country where you can do this. At Lake Placid, I think somewhere in Colorado. People can look it up, but these are not all around the country. There's only 2 or 3 in the country or the continent where you can go do this.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you, Steve Mesler, for joining us here on Skin in the Game. And I just want to wrap up this episode with a quote from Steve, and that's just make tomorrow better than today. Thanks for listening.